When Keanu Reeves walked onto the late-night stage just days after the passing of Pope Francis, the crowd expected something gentle, a soft-spoken guest, a few thoughtful stories. Maybe a quiet tribute. Nothing more, but something felt off. From the first moment, Keanu wasn't following the usual rhythm. The host tossed out light jokes, steering toward laughter. But Keanu didn't bite. His presence was calm, intense, like he'd come for something else entirely. Then it happened. The host reached under the table and placed a small object between them, a golden rosary, gleaming faintly under the studio lights, set atop a deep blue cloth. Keanu's eyes locked onto it. And the mood in the room shifted. What began as a casual late-night appearance started to unravel into something solemn. The host tried to recover. "Long week, huh? The Pope's gone, but you still look like a man untouched by time. What's the secret? Eternal youth pills?" Light laughter rippled through the audience, but Keanu just offered a faint smile, no words. His eyes remained fixed on the rosary. He reached out slowly, brushing his fingertips across its edge like it might dissolve if he touched it too hard. For a long moment, he just sat there, unmoving. Finally, in a voice that barely carried across the stage, he said, "He told me something that night in Rome." Silence. "What do you mean?" the host asked, trying to keep it light. But Keanu wasn't smiling. He wasn't acting, something the world was never supposed to hear. The host glanced toward his crew behind the cameras, unsure if this was a bit, a viral prank maybe. But there was no direction in his earpiece. This wasn't planned. Keanu sat straighter. "Years ago, I was filming in Florence. Nothing major, just a small indie thing. One night, someone knocked at my hotel room door. No name, no words. Just an envelope sealed with the Vatican crest." The audience hung on every word. It wasn't an official summons. It was a handwritten note, just one sentence. "Walk with me in silence among the olive trees. No cameras, no handlers, just him." The host, now subdued, whispered, "Did you go?" Keanu nodded. "I did." He went on, describing a cold evening in Rome, a car without markings, a silent guide through Vatican back corridors. And then out in a quiet garden, Pope Francis waiting beneath an ancient tree. He looked so thin, Keanu said. So fragile, but his eyes, they were full of fire. The Pope, he said, spoke of a video Keanu's anonymous visit to a children's hospital. The Pope called it the most honest act of faith he'd seen in years. Then came the moment that shifted everything. He told me he hadn't felt God in years. Gasps in the audience. He said the silence of the divine was starting to sound like abandonment. That carrying the weight of his office had left him hollow. He prayed and prayed, but the sky never answered. Keanu looked directly into the camera now. He said, "Faith survives silence. But I fear the world is starting to confuse the two." "And what did you say back?" the host asked, voice shaking slightly. Keanu paused. "Nothing. I didn't say anything, I just listened." Then, without warning, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. He set it next to the rosary, and for a heartbeat, the room forgot it was on television. "It was sealed," Keanu said softly, in deep crimson wax. He leaned forward, voice steady, and repeated the words that had been carved into his memory. "If we do not meet again, let this truth live beyond me." The studio went still, the kind of stillness that feels like holding breath underwater. The host swallowed. "Did you ever open it?" Keanu shook his head slowly. "No, I carried it with me, years, through film sets, hotel rooms, cities, deserts. Always in the same inner pocket." He tapped his chest gently. "But now that he's gone, I don't know if silence honors him anymore." The lights above them hummed faintly. Even the studio machinery seemed to quiet itself. Reeves stared at the table, at the golden rosary still resting on its cushion. Then, without rush, he slipped a hand into the inside of his jacket. With the careful hands of someone handling something ancient, he pulled out an envelope. The paper was yellowed from time. Its wax seal, still intact, bore the unmistakable crest of the Holy See pressed deep in blood-red wax. A wave of unease passed through the audience. "You're going to open it?" the host asked, voice tense. Keanu didn't answer. Instead, he held the envelope up for the cameras to see. Then he cracked the seal. The sound was quiet, but it echoed like thunder. He unfolded the page slowly with reverence and began reading. Aloud, to the one who walks in silence, who observes more than he speaks and carries weight others do not see. The room leaned in, every person, every camera. This world does not hunger for saints or spectacle. It needs lantern bearers, men who can carry light through halls darkened by those who once swore to protect them. The page trembled slightly in Keanu's hands, not from fear, but from the pressure of truth. I write this burdened. Duty has strangled my voice for years. I wore the fisherman's crown while drowning in oceans of deceit. The walls of this place conceal more than faith. There are hands within this house that wear the cross, but move like shadows. Keanu looked up for a moment. The host sat frozen. Even the crew behind the cameras had stopped moving. I tried to unmask them. I failed. He paused, a breath, then continued. And now, if I am silenced, I ask you not as a believer, not as a priest, but as a man to carry this forward, not to tear down, but to preserve what must survive. Beat. Was that all? The host asked, his voice dry. Keanu unfolded another slip, thinner, older, tucked behind the first page. His eyes scanned it. His voice dropped. There was a second part, a vision, a warning. The audience stirred. He wrote, the one who unravels me will not wear red. He will not chant or burn books. He will smile. He will come dressed as kin, but carry a hollow center. Gasps audible this time. The host blinked as if the air had thinned. He believed. Keanu said quietly that the collapse of faith would not come through rebellion, but through imitation, a mask of virtue, a smile that hides silence. He folded the paper slowly and laid it beside the rosary. He told me the enemy would not attack the church. He would resemble it. The host leaned forward. You mean he thought this was already happening? Keanu nodded. He told me truth no longer wounds. U.S., it starves us. Because we now bow to illusions that look like faith, but echo with nothing. The host looked deeply unsettled now, glancing sideways for a cue to cut the feed, but no one moved. No director, no cue, no commercial. Reeves continued. He, said the next great step of the church, might not be made by the church at all. The sentence hovered, cold, final. Prophetic? The host echoed. You mean someone else would carry on the church's mission? Keanu didn't reply right away. He turned his gaze once more to the rosary resting on the table, its gold catching the studio light. He believed. Faith must grow, Keanu finally said, but he feared it would be twisted before it could transform. The studio fell utterly still. No one shuffled, no coughs. It wasn't just attention, it was reverence, like hearing something sacred and irreversible. The host tried to shift the mood. This is a lot. We're talking about huge concepts here, prophecy, theology, power structures. Maybe we should pause, give people a moment. No. Keanu's voice cut through the tension, not loud, but unshakable. This isn't storytelling. It's a signal, and there's more. The host leaned back, hands uncertain on his knees. Keanu's tone remained calm, but firm. When I left the Vatican that night, I told no one. Not even the people closest to me. I thought silence would protect what I didn't understand. He reached beside him and pulled out a worn folder, but about a year later, something strange happened. I got a letter. He unfolded a sheet of paper newer than the papal letter, but still aged. No name, no return address. Just a warning. He read it aloud. Do not break the seal. Eyes are already watching. He was never alone. But you are. Stay hidden. Silence shields more than you know. The host sat up straighter. That's a threat. Keanu nodded. The first of many. I received 6 more. Different handwriting. Different countries. No fingerprints. No names. All with one message. Don't speak. You think they came from within the church? The host asked. Initially, yes, but over time I started seeing connections. He laid down the page and pulled out another file, this one full of clippings, photos, scribbled translations. Priests who challenged Vatican finances gone. Investigative reporters disappeared? I found notes hidden inside old Bibles, tucked in private libraries, margins filled with strange markings and one Latin phrase always repeating. Keanu looked directly into the camera. Feinamen. A murmur stirred through the audience. No one knew what it meant, but instinctively it felt dangerous. It means without name, he explained. Not a group, not a faction. A belief. System. A silent thread woven by people who lost faith in the church, but not in God. The host whispered, and the Pope knew of them? He feared them, Keanu replied, but he believed they might become necessary, because he understood the institution might not survive what was coming. Another heavy pause. Then Keanu added quietly, that's when I realized. He didn't choose me randomly. The host stared. What are you saying? Keanu's expression darkened, not from fear, but recognition. He saw something in me that I hadn't seen yet. Not until the dream. He picked up a new page, more recent, creased but carefully preserved. This was left under my hotel room door just weeks before the Pope passed, he said. No seal, no signature. Just this message, typed. He held it to the light. He is encircled. Breaking the seal will have consequences. The silence protects more than you understand. The audience stirred uneasily. I didn't know what it meant, but the messages kept coming, different voices, same command, stay silent. Did you ever investigate? The host asked. I tried. Private security. Contacts in Europe? No names. No prints. Whoever sent them knew how to disappear. He opened a folder and laid out several items on the table. Photographs. Notes, weathered pages. At first I thought I was imagining. Connections. That I was paranoid, but the deeper I looked. He lifted a photograph. Young priest, smiling, full of life. Father Matteo, outspoken about church corruption in Palermo. Disappeared on his way to Rome. He slid another clipping across the table. Journalist found dead in Tiber River. She'd just published and exposed 2 days before. The host's hands trembled slightly as he picked up a glass of water but didn't drink. And then, Keanu continued, I found something buried in the back of a 200-year-old Bible, not catalogued, no digital record. He held it up, a sketch of an eye. Beneath it, 3 words, S. Namen, vivid, without name lives, Keanu translated. Hidden across pages, in languages ancient and modern, always the same message. The host was pale now. The audience was silent. Keanu leaned forward. Again, and that's when I understood. The Pope didn't see me as a celebrity. He saw someone like them, someone invisible, someone unexpected, someone the world wouldn't look to for sacred truth. He chose me not because I belonged to the church, but because I didn't. The host opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally, he asked, But why you? Keanu leaned back, his eyes distant. Because of what came after the dream. The host blinked. The one you mentioned earlier? Keanu nodded. The night I opened the letter, I fell asleep, or maybe I didn't. His voice dipped. I saw myself in a cathedral, enormous, silent, crumbling. Dust in the air. No light, no prayers. Only stillness. The room was breathless. At the altar he stood there, Pope Francis, silent, waiting. The host whispered, What did he say? Keanu closed his eyes for a beat. He said, You thought you were chosen to carry a message, but you were chosen to become the message. If he were just another actor, Keanu said, his voice steady, maybe none of this would have mattered, but what I saw was a man who carried silence like it was sacred. A quiet, collective breath rippled through the audience. Not fear, not confusion, reverence, awe. I woke up in a cold sweat, Keanu said, voice softer now. Shaking, that dream, it wasn't like anything I've ever felt. And since that night, I haven't been the same. The host leaned in. Do you think he knew he was going to die? Keanu didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was almost a whisper. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of dying without purpose. The weight of that sentence seemed to pull the air out of the room. Then, calmly, Keanu reached for the folder in front of him again. And that's why, he said slowly, tonight. In front of everyone, I'm going to show you something that was never supposed to be seen. The audience went still. The cameras were rolling, but nobody moved. Even the host looked frozen, unsure if this was a performance or a turning point. Keanu took a breath. What I'm about to share, it wasn't imagined. It felt given, almost placed. He rested his hands on the table. In the dream, I was inside a vast cathedral, empty, light streamed through high windows, catching the dust in long beams. Every step I took echoed like thunder. It was silent, but not dead. It was a silence that breathed. He looked out, scanning the studio like he was still there. At the altar he stood waiting Pope Francis. But not weak, not sick, he looked peaceful, strong, luminous. The host was now leaning forward, visibly caught in the gravity of the moment. What did he say to you? Keanu's eyes didn't blink. He addressed the room like they were each sitting across from him. He said, "You thought you were just pretending to be a man of principle, but you've always been more than that. You wear silence like a cloak, and you wear it with grace." He paused, swallowing. Then he told me something that still haunts me. The church is drowning in its own noise, the voice of God. It's buried, and only those who honor silence will ever hear it again. The host looked shaken. "Do you believe it was really him?" "I don't know what to believe," Keanu said. "But it changed me. I started pulling back. Fewer roles, more reading scriptures, mystics, even banned texts. I was searching for something, for meaning." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small notebook, weathered and marked by time. "I've been writing. Every night, thoughts, symbols, questions, and sometimes—" "I swear it's not me holding the pen." The host, now visibly pale, asked, "Keanu, are you afraid?" Keanu paused, then nodded slowly. "I was, for a long time, but now, I think the fear was the beginning." A doorway. He turned again to the table, his hand resting beside the rosary. "The Pope told me one more thing in that dream." Just before he faded, the host held his breath. He said, "Your silence will become a gate, but only you can decide whether to open it or keep it locked." A long pause followed. The host looked down, clearly overwhelmed. "This is not what I expected when you sat down tonight." Keanu gave a faint, tired smile. "It wasn't what I expected either when I walked into the Vatican. Then, why now? Why say all of this? Why here?" Keanu looked straight into the camera lens. "Because truth whispers, lies scream. And if I don't speak this now, I might not get the chance again." He leaned back slightly, "And because there's something you need to see." The host hesitated. "Is it dangerous?" Keanu glanced at the folder. "Maybe, but what scares me more is what happens if I keep it hidden." He reached into the folder again and pulled out a small rectangular item, wrapped in thin tissue. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what was coming. The host leaned closer. "What is it?" Keanu held it up, face down. "A photo from that night in the Vatican. I didn't take it, but someone did." He flipped the photograph around and laid it flat on the table, facing only the host. "It's me and the Pope in the garden. The night he told me everything." The host leaned over, squinting, then stiffened. "There's someone else in it." Keanu nodded. "A figure, in a dark hood in the trees, just watching." He continued, pulling out more images, keeping them angled away from the cameras. "That same figure appears in 3 other photographs sent to me different years, different locations, always watching, never close, always hidden." The host's voice cracked. "Who is it?" "I don't know," Keanu said quietly. "But in the dream, the Pope warned me, you'll see the shadow before you see the light." He laid out the final photo, careful to block it from public view. The host stared at it, face pale. Keanu stood. "The last thing he said to me was this: faith isn't missing, it's waiting in silence. Silence isn't peace. Sometimes it's the sound before war." He turned to leave, but paused at the edge of the curtain. "If you think it ends here." He looked back, expression dark, then wait, because what followed that night was worse.